To begin with an overview of the tabernacle. It has occurred to me and to some of the leadership that we've talked so extensively about the tabernacle, but it may be hard for us to imagine or get an image of what these things look like in our minds. It might be hard to approach the tabernacle if you have no earthly idea what it looks like. And so that's what this Bible study is mostly about. It's just understanding what these pieces look like, what their significance is in the Old Testament, and how they apply to us in the New Testament church. So, let's begin. Here at the top we have a scripture to kind of open everything up, and that's Hebrews chapter 8, verse 5. It reads, "Who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount." So if you recall, Moses was on the mountain, Mount Sinai, also referred to as Mount Horeb in the Bible, in the Old Testament. He went to receive instruction from the Lord for how to govern the children of Israel, how to bring them closer to the Lord. And one of the things he received was the pattern for the tabernacle. So the first thing you see on the paper, our diagram here, is, I guess, a recreation of what the tabernacle, the Old Testament tabernacle, would have looked like. You see there's kind of a wall around it. But that wall is made of linen and pillars. And most of the information that you can find about the tabernacle in the Old Testament is found in the book of Exodus, from chapter 25 all the way to the end of the book of Exodus. Most of the information about the tabernacle is there. So if you want to brush up on the information for yourself, that's probably the first place that you want to start. You want to choose a translation that's not going to make you confused, because the King James Version can be a bit confusing with all the cubits and, you know, all of the old English language that's used. It actually sounds a little confusing. So especially if you're going to start studying this on your own, pick a translation that makes sense to you. Stick with it. I like the Message. I like the Amplified. Sometimes the NIV is helpful. Sometimes the New King James Version is helpful. You may have to flip between versions, but just so that you can get an idea of how this really works and get a picture of it in your mind. Okay. So here we have the tabernacle compound. These walls that you see surrounding the compound were made of clean, white, fine linen. And then you got these pillars. And those pillars were kind of to stabilize this wall that surrounded the tabernacle. And you see here that there are some dimensions. See that it wasn't really, I always thought it was a huge place. When I started reading the dimensions of it, I was like, this isn't really like this huge thing, because remember, this had to be portable. They had to be able to fold this place up, pick it up, and go somewhere else. So it couldn't be like huge like the temple was. The walls surrounding the outside of the tabernacle compound were about 7 feet high. So they were taller than the average man. Then you get to the eastern side, and that's what we're looking at. Is the front is the eastern side, and the eastern side, which looks like the front, that's where the gate is. That's where the entrance is to the tabernacle compound. And then once you get through that gate, we're looking at what's called the outer court. The outer court houses the brazen altar, or the altar of sacrifice. It also houses the brazen laver. And then you see that little square toward the back, and that is the tent, or referred to as the tabernacle proper. That houses the holy place and the most holy place, and in the holy place you find the table of showbread, the golden altar, or the altar of incense, and the candlesticks. And all these things are down on the bottom of this paper that you see. And then in the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies, is the Ark of the Covenant. So that's like the overview. Okay, the tent is actually made of boards made of acacia wood, and they're overlaid with gold. And then they're kind of like inside of the tent, and the tent serves as like a ceiling or a roof for the holy place and the most holy place. And there are 4 layers of material that they use to cover the tent. And it gets pretty interesting if you look at what all the different components are and what they mean. So the first layer that covers the tabernacle proper, or the tent, is linen. And it's really cool because once you got into the most holy place, there were these embroideries on the linen. And if you looked up, you could see the embroideries were cherubim. So it's like you had the cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant, and then you had cherubim kind of like covering the ceiling of the tent. So that was pretty cool. And then the next layer, I believe, is... And the second layer is made of goat's hair, or like goat skin. The next layer, the third layer, is made of ram skins dyed red. And red has a very significant definition in the Old Testament. It's blood, it's sin, it's actually the color of man, which I thought was interesting, scarlet. And then the last layer is said to be porpoise skins. When we went over this with the youth, they were like, porpoise? What's a porpoise? A porpoise, does anybody know what a porpoise is?
Like a dolphin.
Like a dolphin. So basically, it's like weatherproofing, okay? So the tabernacle tent, the tabernacle proper, is weatherproof. What I found most interesting about that is that it's skin that's covering it. And the tabernacle that we know, which is Jesus Christ, came in skin. So I found that very interesting. That throughout this, we're just going to see a lot of different parallels, a lot of different ways that we can really begin to associate these pieces of furniture with Jesus Christ himself, which is what they were meant to do. They were all meant to point to the coming of the King. Okay? So, we looked at the overall pieces. Now, let us go through the gate, okay, and enter the tabernacle compound. I feel that we should discuss the gate just a little bit. The gate is the first entrance to the tabernacle. It's where everybody would assemble and bring their offerings, their gifts to the Lord. And the curtain that covered the gate was made of finely twisted linen, and it was embroidered with blue and purple and scarlet. So blue is associated with kingdom, heaven, okay? And then purple is royalty, and scarlet represents man. So you've got heaven and man meeting together. If you got blue and red, you get purple. So this is what we're seeing. is the entrance to heaven on earth. This is God's presence on earth. And so we get to enter through the gate. There is only one entrance to the tabernacle compound, and that is for a reason. That's to signify that there is only one way that God has prescribed for us to approach him. In the Old Testament, there's only one way. That's the gate into the tabernacle. In the New Testament, there's only one way, and his name is Jesus Christ. Jesus said in John 14:6, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. It is no great coincidence that if you look deep enough, you'll find that the entrances, the 3 different entrances to the tabernacle, were nicknamed the way, the truth, and the life. The gate, the door, and the veil. He is the only way to advance, to get close to God. And that's what Jesus is saying. I'm the only way that you're ever going to see God. Me. And that's what the tabernacle is. Then we look at John 10:9. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. And that's obviously not the King James Version. But it's just saying, I'm the gate. And what we're going to see throughout this study is that every time we look at a piece of furniture, every time we look at something to do with the tabernacle, we're going to see Jesus there. And then I like Matthew 7:13 and 14, because it reminds me so much of the tabernacle gate. And this is Jesus speaking here. And he says, enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life. Life being the last entrance to the tabernacle, the true presence of God, the last entrance, the veil into the Holy of Holies. Narrow is the way that leadeth to life, and few there be that find it. So that's the gate. It's narrow. It's not easy to enter into, because if you've tried this tabernacle prayer, you understand that before you even get through the gate, you're bombarded with all kinds of images and all kinds of distractions before you can even get in. It's not easy to enter in. Narrow is the way. Okay, so we've looked at the gate. Now let's look at the brazen altar. I learned some interesting things about the brazen altar just today. The brazen altar is made of acacia wood. If you've read the Old Testament, you might see it as shittim. And this wood is pretty much present in every single one of the different pieces of tabernacle furniture except for the candlesticks and the brazen laver. Anything else that's built is made with acacia wood. It's overlaid with bronze. Bronze symbolizes judgment. Usually signifies judgment on sin in the Old Testament. So it's acacia wood overlaid with bronze. It's about 7.5 feet wide by 7.5 feet long. It's 4.5 feet tall. And it's kind of raised up on a mound of earth so that it's lifted up just a little bit above all of the surrounding tabernacle furniture. It has, and I know if you look at the picture, I'm not sure if it's visible. It's slightly visible. You can see that there are 4 horns, one on each corner. There is a grate down in the middle there, where the animal is held. And I thought that was kind of interesting. In Exodus, Exodus 27, verses 1 through 8, which you can read. Make sure you write down, because it is kind of a long reading. It gives the dimensions of the altar. It gives what it looks like and what it's made of and everything. And that grate kind of hangs by hooks and rings. So I guess it's removable so they can clean it. I thought that was interesting. I never noticed that before. So the horns on the altar are very interesting. When the priest would make a sacrifice, they would take some of the blood and put it on the horns of the altar. Horns in the Old Testament, horns in the old order of things actually represent power. So when you take blood and you put it on the horns, you show the power of blood to save. Okay? The power of blood to atone for sin. Jesus in the New Testament is called the horn of our salvation. Actually, David calls him the horn of our salvation as well. So we see that even in the Old Testament, something that seemed like it didn't really make any sense, putting blood on the horns, actually signified the power of the blood to atone for sin. On the sides of this altar, you'll see that there are 2 rings on each side, and then there are 2 poles to go through those rings, because this altar is portable. Okay? Everything in the tabernacle had to be portable. And that speaks of Jesus, how he was walking salvation. It should speak to us about the presence of God in us. It's portable. It goes with us where we go. All right, let's look at Leviticus 17:11. This is the Lord speaking. I believe he's speaking to Moses. And he says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls. It is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul." So the blood has the power to make atonement for sin. Then we can look at Hebrews 9, verse 22.